Hey, what's up, people? Piz out here. Today I want to talk to you guys about the new Blu-ray for the documentary The American Dreamer from the fine folks over at Etiquette Pictures. The American Dreamer is a documentary that followed the arduous, colorful, highly unorthodox editing process for Dennis Hopper's follow-up to his hugely influential Easy Rider. Of course, after Easy Rider, Dennis Hopper was just bathed in praise. He was called this brilliant new voice in American cinema. The film itself ushered in just this sort of a turning point in just the landscape of American cinema in general. Dennis Hopper, of course, being the writer and director of that film, was saw as a genius, the voice of a generation, etc., etc. So at this point, Dennis Hopper had pretty much carte blanche in Hollywood. He could do whatever he wanted, and he wanted to do a film called The Last Movie. And Universal gave him pretty much the keys to the kingdom. Whatever you want to do, you've got complete and utter creative control over the project. This documentary follows him through a 100+ day editing process for The American Dreamer. Over 40 hours of footage was shot for the film, and L.M. Kit Carson, who you may remember was the writer of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and Lawrence Schiller co-direct this documentary. And it's not just about the editing process for that film, which it turned out the last movie was just this huge disaster. It made no money, it flopped. And it pretty much tanked Dennis Hopper's career for a number of years. But it's also a documentary just kind of about Dennis Hopper. It captures a moment in a young man's life when literally the world is his oyster. Now, I've always loved Dennis Hopper. He's always been one of the most interesting just characters. I love to read things about Dennis Hopper. I love to hear people talk about Dennis Hopper. I love to read or listen to interviews conducted with Dennis Hopper. I think his choice of characters that he chose to play in movies are phenomenal. I think just hearing him talk about anything in particular is just absolutely fascinating. This was a truly unique person. And I've always just been fascinated with Dennis Hopper, and this was just an absolute delight to watch, because again, this is a young Dennis Hopper at the height of his sort of, like I said, the world is his oyster. He'd just done Easy Rider, and you know, he could do no wrong. He does sort of bathe in the usual excesses that one would imagine being a filmmaker of his type at the time. Lots of drug use in this movie, lots of sex going on in this movie, sex with multiple partners, sex with just random people. Dennis Hopper was really living the high life in 1971 in more ways than one, to be perfectly honest. It was an absolute delight to watch this film. And we also learn a little bit about Dennis Hopper, you know, the person. He talks about, you know, as a child, he led a very lonely and an angry childhood. And the only way that he thought that he could escape this loneliness was to be some sort of artist. And then he discovered, of course, after becoming an artist, that he's actually even lonelier as an artist. We get to hear Dennis Hopper espouse upon his philosophies pertaining to drugs, to sex, to relationships, to politics, to revolution, etc., etc. All in all, this is just a really interesting, really fun documentary about Dennis Hopper. If you're a fan of Dennis Hopper, if you're like me, just someone who's just very intrigued with Dennis Hopper, this is something you definitely want to get your hands on. This is a Blu-ray DVD combo pack from the fine folks over at Etiquette Pictures. Etiquette Pictures is kind of a, I don't know if I want to call it a sister company, brother company to Vinegar Syndrome. which is a company that's been releasing a lot of really good horror Blu-rays. Etiquette Pictures is more of their sort of art house kind of division, we'll put it that way. But yeah, highly, highly enjoyed The American Dreamer. We've got some special features on the disc. I took notes as I always do for you guys. We have got a 30-minute featurette called Fighting Against the Wind, which is a making of. It's sort of a making of the documentary and a making of the last movie. We have an interview with Lawrence Schiller, who was the co-director of the documentary. There's also interviews with the cinematographer, the producers, one of the co-stars for the last movie. They talk about just the making of that film and how it was kind of out of hand. Pretty wild a journey making that movie, needless to say. Like I said, 40 hours of footage, over a year to edit the film. Yeah, really interesting, and like I said, they just discussed the colorful production and, of course, post-production of the film and how Lawrence Schiller and his co-director, the late L.M. Kit Carson, captured all that. Really interesting. We've also got a 7-minute featurette about the preservation of The American Dreamer. The American Dreamer, the documentary, was a film that just largely went unseen. Very few people saw this documentary, and when they found an original print of it, it had pretty much just turned sepia. So they went through a really painstaking process to actually put the color back in the film, and the film looks great. The film looks great. And also, proceeds from this Blu-ray will go back to, I believe they're called the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis, for the preservation of these films that deserve to be preserved. So a portion of the proceeds from this documentary will go to the Walker Institute, which is very, very cool. We've also got a photo gallery, a lot of on-set photos from the making of the documentary. I highly recommend this. Like I said, if you're a fan of Dennis Hopper, you're going to want to check this out. Really interesting. Like I said, the thing that really interested me the most about this film, again, was you're seeing Dennis Hopper in a time in his life when the world is just his oyster. And yes, there's excesses. Yes, there's ego. Yes, there's a little bit of pretension there. But you're kind of seeing him sort of just stripped down, literally and figuratively. And I found it really, really interesting. So yeah, I do recommend it. The American Dreamer documentary Blu-ray DVD combo pack from the folks over at Etiquette Pictures. I'll put a link in the description to Etiquette Pictures website. Go over, check them out. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.